Horse refuses to budge on lonely trail, hiker follows, then discovers the truth. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the dense forest as Mia hiked the winding trail. It was her first solo trek in months, a decision she'd made to clear her mind and reconnect with nature. The solitude of the trail had always been a source of comfort for her, a place where she could let her thoughts wander as freely as the wind through the trees. But this time, something felt different. The stillness was too heavy, the usual chorus of chirping birds and rustling leaves replaced by an eerie quiet. As she rounded a bend, she froze in her tracks. Standing in the middle of the trail was a horse, its sleek coat shining in the golden light. It was massive yet graceful, its dark eyes watching her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. The horse didn't move, its muscular frame planted firmly as if guarding the path ahead. Its bridle hung loose, and there was no sign of a rider or owner nearby. "Hey there," Mia said softly, her voice barely carrying through the silence. She stepped forward cautiously, her hiking boots crunching against the gravel. The horse's ears twitched, but it made no attempt to flee or approach. Mia's curiosity was piqued, but her instincts urged caution. A horse this far from civilization, untethered and without a rider, was unusual, troubling, even. She glanced around, searching for any sign of a person or camp, but the forest seemed endless, stretching in all directions. She reached into her backpack and pulled out an apple, holding it out as an offering. "You hungry?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. The horse sniffed the air, its ears swiveling toward her, but it didn't budge. Frustrated but unwilling to leave the animal behind, Mia decided to step closer. She noticed the horse's flanks heaving slightly, as if it had been running hard before stopping here. Its eyes, though calm, seemed to hold a strange urgency, an unspoken message she couldn't quite understand. Just as she was about to turn back, the horse moved, not away from her, but down the trail, its powerful legs carrying it with deliberate steps. It stopped after a few paces and turned to look at her, its head nodding slightly as if beckoning her to follow. Mia hesitated, her pulse quickening. Was she imagining things? The horse's behavior was uncanny, almost purposeful. Against her better judgment, she decided to follow, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and intrigue. The trail grew narrower as the horse led her deeper into the woods. Shadows lengthened, and the air grew cooler, the forest canopy blocking out the remaining light. Mia's grip tightened on her backpack straps as she tried to keep pace. The horse moved with a quiet urgency, glancing back every so often to ensure she was still behind. After what felt like an eternity, the trail opened into a small clearing. In the center was a crumbled stone structure, overgrown with moss and vines. The horse stopped abruptly, its ears swiveling toward the building as it let out a low, plaintive whinny. Mia stepped closer, her breath catching as she noticed something lying in the shadows of the ruins. A tattered backpack, partially hidden beneath the brush. Her stomach dropped as she realized it wasn't just a backpack. There was a boot sticking out beside it. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. She rushed forward, the horse staying rooted in place as though guarding the scene. Kneeling beside the bag, she discovered a man lying motionless, his face pale and his clothes caked with dirt. Mia's mind raced as she assessed the situation. The man was unconscious but breathing shallowly. His face bore scratches, and there was a visible bruise forming on his temple. She gently shook his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked urgently. There was no response. She checked her phone but found no signal this deep in the woods. Her first aid training kicked in. She needed to stabilize him and find a way to get help. The horse stood nearby, watching her intently, its ears flicking back and forth. "Is he your owner?" Mia wondered aloud, glancing at the horse. The animal nickered softly, stepping closer but maintaining a respectful distance. She rummaged through the man's backpack, hoping to find identification or a clue to his condition. Inside, she found a wallet with a driver's license. His name was Daniel Brooks. There was also a map of the area, a compass, and a small first aid kit. She used the kit to clean his wounds as best she could. "Come on, Daniel, wake up," she urged, tapping his cheek lightly. After a few tense moments, Daniel's eyelids fluttered. He let out a weak groan, his eyes unfocused. "Thank goodness," Mia sighed in relief. "Can you hear me?" His gaze slowly sharpened. Confusion etched on his face. Where am I?" he mumbled. "You're on a trail off the main path," she explained gently. "It looks like you had an accident. Can you remember what happened?" Daniel winced, touching his forehead. "I was riding. There was a spooked deer. The horse reared, and I fell." Mia nodded. "Your horse found me on the trail and led me to you. We need to get you some help." He attempted to sit up but collapsed back with a groan. "I think my ankle's twisted, and my head is pounding." Mia examined his ankle, noting the swelling. "It's definitely sprained. You shouldn't walk on it." She looked at the horse, an idea forming. "Maybe we can get you onto your horse, and I can lead you back to the trailhead." Daniel shook his head weakly. "I don't think I can stay upright." Feeling dizzy, Mia bit her lip, thinking. The sun was sinking lower, and the temperature would drop soon. They couldn't stay here overnight without proper shelter. "All right," she said decisively. "I'll make a fire to keep us warm, and at first light, I'll go for help." She gathered dry branches and leaves, using a lighter from her pack to start a small fire. The warmth was immediate, and Daniel seemed to relax slightly. She offered him water and a granola bar from her supplies. "Thank you," he said quietly, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." "Thank your horse," Mia replied with a smile. "He's the real hero." They sat in companionable silence for a while. The horse grazed nearby, occasionally lifting its head to check on them. "His name is Shadow," Daniel said suddenly. Mia looked up. Fitting name. Daniel managed a faint smile. "He's always been perceptive. I guess he knew I needed help." Mia poked the fire thoughtfully. "It's amazing how animals can sense things. He wouldn't move until I followed him." Daniel's gaze grew distant. "I've had Shadow since he was a foal. Trained him myself. We've been through a lot together." She sensed there was more to his story but didn't press. Instead, she asked, "Do you come out here often?" "Used to," he replied softly. "This was my wife's favorite trail." Mia noticed the sadness in his voice. She passed away last year," he admitted, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I haven't been back here since. Thought maybe it was time." "I'm sorry," Mia said gently. "I can't imagine how hard that must be." He sighed. "It's been difficult." Shadow took it hard too. They were inseparable. Mia glanced at the horse, now standing closer as if listening. "He seems very loyal." Daniel nodded. "He is. I guess today was a wake-up call." They fell silent again, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging in the air. As the night deepened, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Mia added more wood to the fire, ensuring it would last through the night. "Get some rest," she advised. "We'll need our energy tomorrow." He agreed, settling back against his backpack. "Thank you, Mia." She looked at him in surprise. "How did you know my name?" He gestured weakly toward her backpack. "Your tag," she chuckled. "Right? Well, sleep tight." Mia sat up, keeping watch as Daniel drifted off. Shadow remained nearby, his presence oddly comforting. She gazed into the flames, her thoughts drifting to why she had come out here in the first place. Her own heartache seemed less heavy now, connected somehow to this stranger and his loyal horse. As dawn broke, Mia gently woke Daniel. "I'm gonna head back to get help. Will you be okay for a few hours?" He nodded. "I'll be fine. Be careful." She stood, stretching her stiff muscles. Turning to Shadow, she hesitated. "Would you stay with him?" she asked the horse, feeling a bit foolish. But Shadow snorted softly, nudging Daniel's shoulder. "Looks like he's not going anywhere," Daniel remarked with a small smile. Mia grinned. "I'll be back as soon as I can." She set off at a brisk pace, the morning light filtering through the trees. The trail seemed less ominous now, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. After about an hour, she finally found a spot with cell reception and called for emergency assistance. "Hang tight, Daniel," she whispered to herself as she made her way back. Help is on the way. When she returned, paramedics were already tending to Daniel. They had him on a stretcher, his ankle wrapped and an IV in his arm. He looked relieved to see her. Thanks to you, they'll have me fixed up in no time, he said. She smiled. Glad to hear it. One of the paramedics approached her. Are you the one who found him? Good work. You probably saved his life. Mia felt a flush of embarrassment. I just did what anyone would do. They loaded Daniel into the ambulance, and Shadow began to paw the ground nervously. Don't worry, boy, Daniel called to the horse. They'll take care of me. Mia stepped forward. What about Shadow? Do you need me to take him somewhere? Daniel thought for a moment. Would you mind? There's a ranch a few miles down the main road. They know me there. She nodded. Of course. As the ambulance pulled away, Mia took Shadow's reins. Looks like it's just you and me now. Shadow nudged her shoulder gently, and she felt a strange sense of camaraderie. The journey to the ranch was peaceful, the morning air fresh and filled with birdsong. Upon arrival, the ranch owner greeted her warmly. Ah, Shadow, we were wondering where Daniel had gone off to, the elderly woman said. Is everything all right? Mia explained the situation. He's in the hospital, but he'll be okay. He asked me to bring Shadow here. Thank you, dear, the woman replied. I'm Martha. We appreciate your help. Mia patted Shadow's neck. He's quite the horse. Smart too. Martha smiled knowingly. He's special, that one. Has a knack for bringing people together. Mia raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, ever since Daniel lost his wife, he's been isolating himself, Martha explained. Shadow's been restless, like he knew Daniel needed something, or someone, to help him heal. Mia pondered this as she said her goodbyes and headed back to her car. The events of the past day felt surreal, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps Shadow had led her to Daniel for a reason. Over the next few days, Mia couldn't get the encounter out of her mind. She decided to visit Daniel at the hospital to check on his recovery. Well, this is a pleasant surprise, Daniel said as she entered his room. I wanted to see how you were doing, she replied, pulling up a chair. Better, thanks to you. They chatted comfortably, discovering shared interests and a mutual appreciation for the outdoors. As visiting hours ended, Daniel hesitated before speaking. I know this might sound forward, but once I'm back on my feet, would you like to join me for a horseback ride? Properly this time, Mia smiled warmly. I'd like that. Weeks later, they met at the ranch. Shadow greeted them with a cheerful whinny. As they rode along the familiar trail, the sun casting dappled light through the leaves, Mia felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time. Funny how life brings people together, Daniel mused, echoing Martha's words. Mia glanced at him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. Sometimes all it takes is a stubborn horse. They both laughed, the sound melding with the rustling of the trees and the distant call of birds. Shadow trotted ahead, leading the way as if he knew exactly where they were meant to go. As they reached the clearing where they'd first met, Daniel dismounted and helped Mia down. They stood together, the memories of that day washing over them. Thank you, Daniel said softly, not just for saving me, but for helping me find a reason to move forward. She met his gaze. I think we both found something we didn't know we were missing. Shadow grazed nearby, lifting his head to watch them. At that moment, Mia realized that the horse had been more than just a guide through the woods. He had been a catalyst for healing for both of them. Looks like Shadow's mission is accomplished, she remarked. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. Maybe now he can rest easy. They lingered in the clearing, the future unfolding before them like the trail ahead. Unknown but filled with possibilities. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the forest, they mounted their horses and headed back, side by side. The trail, once a place of solitude and mystery, had become a path towards something new, a journey they were ready to take together. The days that followed their ride felt like a turning point for both Mia and Daniel. Though their lives had been marked by loss and struggle, the bond they had begun to forge felt natural, as if the universe had conspired to bring them together through Shadow's intervention. Daniel's recovery was steady, and he returned to the ranch often to visit Shadow. Mia found herself joining him more frequently, not just for rides but for conversations that stretched into hours. They talked about everything: their pasts, their dreams, and the way Shadow seemed to have orchestrated their meeting. One afternoon, as they sat on the ranch's porch overlooking the pasture, Daniel broke the comfortable silence. When I fell that day, I thought, that might be it for me. I've been stuck in this loop of grief for so long. I didn't see a way out. Mia glanced at him, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his voice. But Shadow didn't give up on me, he continued. He found you, brought you to me. I don't know what I believe about fate, but it feels like there was a reason for all of this. Mia nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. That day on the trail, I was out there to clear my head, trying to figure out where my life was going. And then Shadow appeared, like he was waiting for me. I can't explain it, but I'm glad I followed him. Their connection deepened with time, each ride through the forest strengthening their bond. Shadow seemed to thrive in their company, his once restless energy now replaced by a calm confidence. It was as if the horse knew his mission had been fulfilled, his loyalty to Daniel now shared with Mia. One golden afternoon, as they rode along the trail that had become so familiar, Daniel pulled his horse to a stop. Mia, he began, his tone serious yet gentle. I never imagined I'd feel this way again, but being around you, it's like the world makes sense again. I just wanted you to know how much you mean to me. Mia felt her cheeks flush, her heart swelling at his words. She dismounted her horse, walking over to him. You've brought so much light back into my life too, she said softly. I don't know where this path leads, but I know I want to keep walking it with you. Daniel smiled, the first genuine, unburdened smile she had seen from him. He stepped down from his horse and took her hand. Then let's see where it takes us. Months turned into seasons, and the connection between Mia and Daniel blossomed into a partnership rooted in trust and shared healing. Together, they created new traditions: weekend trail rides, quiet evenings at the ranch, and tending to the land that had brought them together. The ranch became a place of renewal not just for them, but for others as well. They decided to open the ranch to those who needed a place to heal. Children from the community came to learn about horses, and families seeking solace found peace in the trails and open fields. Shadow, ever the steadfast guide, became a symbol of the ranch's purpose, a reminder that even in the face of hardship, connection and love could light the way forward. On the anniversary of their meeting, Daniel and Mia returned to the clearing where Shadow had first brought them together. The air was crisp, the leaves a riot of autumn colors. They stood side by side, the memory of that fateful day fresh in their minds. Hard to believe it's been a year, Mia said, her voice tinged with wonder. Daniel nodded. It feels like a lifetime ago, and yet, like it just happened. Shadow stood nearby, grazing peacefully. Daniel reached out to stroke the horse's mane. You saved me that day, buddy. You saved us both. Mia smiled, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. And now we have the chance to pay it forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in a warm, golden glow, they felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Shadow, but for the unexpected journey that had brought them here. The trail ahead was still unknown, but this time, they were ready to face it together, guided by the lessons of resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond that had formed between them, and the remarkable horse who had refused to give up. As the years rolled by, the ranch flourished, evolving into more than just a sanctuary for Mia, Daniel, and Shadow. It became a haven for countless others seeking peace and renewal. People from nearby towns and distant cities alike came to experience the transformative magic of the ranch, drawn by its reputation for fostering healing and connection. Mia and Daniel worked tirelessly to ensure the ranch remained a welcoming place. They expanded the property to include a small lodge for overnight visitors, a garden where people could learn about sustainable living, and trails specifically designed for therapeutic horseback riding. The community rallied around them, offering their time and resources to help bring their vision to life. Shadow, now a celebrated figure, seemed to sense his place in the story. He became a gentle teacher for children learning to ride, his calm demeanor and sharp intuition making him the perfect guide. Adults who had experienced trauma found solace in his presence, often saying that his understanding gaze felt like a balm for their hearts. One day, a young boy named Alex came to the ranch. He had recently lost his father and struggled to speak about his emotions. When introduced to Shadow, Alex was hesitant at first, his small frame tense with uncertainty. But Shadow approached him with deliberate care, lowering his head and nuzzling the boy's hand. The change in Alex was immediate. He laughed, a sound his mother said she hadn't heard in months, and began stroking Shadow's mane. Over time, he grew more confident, sharing stories about his father as he learned to ride. By the end of his stay, Alex had found a sense of peace he hadn't thought possible. "I don't know how to thank you," Alex's mother told Mia and Daniel, her eyes brimming with tears. "This place, this horse, it's changed everything for him." Mia smiled warmly. "It's Shadow. He has a way of knowing what people need." The ranch became a place where stories like Alex's unfolded regularly. Each person who passed through its gates left with a renewed sense of hope, their lives touched by the same transformative energy that had brought Mia and Daniel together. Shadow, now older but still vibrant, remained at the heart of it all. His story was shared in every corner of the ranch, a testament to the power of trust, resilience, and the unexpected ways life can bring us together. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia and Daniel stood at the edge of the clearing where they had first met. Shadow grazed nearby, his movements slower now but no less graceful. The clearing had been transformed into a memorial of sorts, with a wooden bench and a plaque that read, "In honor of the paths we take and the bonds we form, for Shadow, who led us here and taught us to love again." Daniel wrapped an arm around Mia's shoulders. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Mia smiled, her gaze drifting to Shadow. "I can, because we've had him guiding us every step of the way." As Shadow's years began to wane, Mia and Daniel made every effort to ensure his days were filled with love and comfort. They knew that the time they had left with him was precious, and they cherished every moment. When the day came for Shadow to rest, they held him close, their hearts heavy yet full of gratitude for everything he had given them. The ranch carried on, infused with Shadow's legacy. His story became a permanent part of its history, shared with every new visitor as a reminder of the power of resilience, connection, and love. And as the years passed, Mia and Daniel found themselves often walking the trails Shadow had once led them down, their steps lighter for the journey he had given them. Somewhere, in the quiet expanse of the world, a part of Shadow's spirit lingered, eternal, unbroken, and forever guiding those who needed it most. Though Shadow's physical presence was gone, his spirit lived on in every corner of the ranch. Mia and Daniel often found themselves feeling his presence during quiet moments on the trails or in the laughter of the children he had once guided so patiently. His story became the heart of the ranch, a tale shared around campfires and during community events, reminding everyone of the horse who had refused to give up and, in doing so, had changed so many lives. One spring morning, as Mia and Daniel walked the trails, they noticed a new energy in the air. The ranch had grown into something even they hadn't fully envisioned. A group of volunteers had begun offering programs for veterans dealing with PTSD, finding healing through horseback riding and working with animals. A local artist had installed sculptures of horses along the trails, each one dedicated to Shadow's memory. "This place has become so much more than we imagined," Daniel said, his voice tinged with pride. "Shadow would have loved it." "He would," Mia agreed, brushing her fingers over the delicate petals of a wildflower blooming near the trail. "But I think he already knew. He started this." Months later, during the ranch's annual celebration, the community gathered to unveil a new addition, a life-size bronze statue of Shadow, his head raised proudly as if surveying the land he had called home. The statue stood at the entrance to the ranch, a symbol of strength, guidance, and unwavering love. Below it, a plaque bore an inscription, "To Shadow, whose heart led us to each other and to a greater purpose. Your spirit guides us still." As the crowd applauded, Mia felt a wave of emotion. She turned to Daniel, her eyes misty but full of gratitude. "It's perfect," she said softly. Daniel nodded, his hand resting on her shoulder. "It's everything he was." Years passed, and the ranch's reputation continued to grow. People from around the world came to learn about Shadow and the profound impact he had on Mia, Daniel, and the community. His story became a source of inspiration for anyone searching for hope, reminding them that even in the darkest moments, there's always a path forward, often led by those we least expect. For Mia and Daniel, the ranch was a living testament to everything Shadow had taught them. They devoted their lives to preserving his legacy, knowing that his spirit was woven into the very fabric of the land. Each morning, as they walked the trails or tended to the horses, they felt his presence in the rustling leaves, the gentle breeze, and the endless love that filled the ranch. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia and Daniel stood at the edge of the clearing where they had first met. The golden light bathed the trees, and the air was alive with the sound of birds and crickets. They held hands, their hearts full of gratitude for the journey they had shared. "This place," Daniel began, his voice steady, "it's not just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's found something here. Something they needed." Mia smiled, her gaze drifting to the trails stretching into the distance. And it all started with him. As the light faded, they felt a familiar warmth, as though Shadow were still beside them, leading them onward. And in that moment, they knew his legacy would never fade, living on in the lives he had touched and the love he had inspired. Somewhere, in the quiet corners of the world, the spirit of a horse trotted through the fields, his presence unseen but deeply felt, a guiding light for those searching for their way home. One stormy night, just as the ranch's lights flickered under the weight of the heavy winds, a frantic knock echoed through Mia and Daniel's front door. Startled, they exchanged a glance before Daniel opened it to find a teenage girl drenched from head to toe, her face pale and stricken with fear. "Please," she stammered, her breath catching between sobs. "My little brother, he's lost in the woods. We were hiking, and he wandered off when the storm started. I don't know where he is." Mia was already pulling on her raincoat. "We'll help," she said firmly. "How long ago did you lose sight of him?" "An hour, maybe more," the girl said, her voice trembling. "I've been looking, but I can't find him." Daniel grabbed a flashlight and his jacket. "We'll take Shadow," he said. "He's always had a way of finding people who need help." The girl looked confused. "But Shadow's gone." Mia placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "His spirit isn't." The storm howled as Mia, Daniel, and the girl ventured into the woods, the rain soaking through their clothes and the mud making every step a challenge. The girl's flashlight cut through the darkness, but the dense trees seemed to close in around them, their shadows dancing in the chaotic light. "Let's think like Shadow," Daniel said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "He'd know where to look." Mia scanned the terrain, her heart pounding. He'd follow the trail, look for signs of movement. As they pressed deeper into the forest, Mia's mind raced. She remembered how Shadow had once led her and Daniel to each other, how he had an uncanny ability to sense when someone was in trouble. She closed her eyes briefly, her soaked hair clinging to her face. "Guide us again, Shadow, please." Suddenly, a sharp neigh pierced through the storm. Mia froze, her breath catching in her throat. Daniel stopped beside her, his eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered. The girl nodded, her face a mix of fear and hope. It sounded like a horse, another neighbor, this one closer, cut through the darkness. Without hesitation, Mia turned toward the sound, her flashlight bouncing off the trees as she moved. The others followed, their steps quickening despite the treacherous terrain. As they reached a clearing, the beam of Mia's flashlight landed on something that made her heart leap. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, its coat shining even in the dim light. It was a horse, its form strikingly familiar, with dark, steady eyes that seemed to glow in the storm. "Shadow?" Mia breathed, her voice barely audible. The horse whinnied and turned, its movements deliberate as it began to walk into the trees. "He wants us to follow," Daniel said, his voice full of awe. They moved quickly, following the horse's trail through the storm. Every so often, it paused to glance back, ensuring they were still behind it. The girl's sobs turned into whispers of hope as the horse led them to a rocky outcropping. There, beneath an overhang, they found the boy, curled up and shivering but alive. "Logan!" the girl cried, rushing to his side. She wrapped her arms around him, her tears mixing with the rain. "I thought I'd lost you." Logan looked up, his lips trembling. "I got scared. But then the horse came. It stayed with me until you found me." Mia and Daniel exchanged a glance, their emotions overwhelming. The horse, now standing a few feet away, let out a soft nicker before stepping back into the shadows. As the storm began to ease, it disappeared into the trees, its figure fading like a ghost. Back at the ranch, as the family warmed up by the fire, the girl turned to Mia and Daniel. "That horse, it saved us. How is that possible?" Mia smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. Shadow always knew when someone needed help, and maybe part of him never stopped. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Some bonds don't break, they just change. Shadow's spirit will always be here, guiding us when we need it most." The story of that night spread quickly, becoming another chapter in the legend of Shadow. Visitors to the ranch often spoke of sensing his presence, of hearing distant hoofbeats on quiet trails. His story became a symbol of love, resilience, and the extraordinary connections that transcend time. And though Mia and Daniel never saw Shadow's form again, they felt his presence in every rustle of the leaves, every gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers. He had led them to each other, to their purpose, and now to a life filled with meaning and connection. Shadow's spirit remained, eternal and unbroken, a guiding light for all who sought it. The morning after the storm, the ranch was quiet, the air crisp and fresh as the sunlight broke through the lingering mist. Mia and Daniel stood at the edge of the clearing, reflecting on the events of the previous night. The boy and his sister had left safely, their gratitude etched in their tearful goodbyes, but the memory of Shadow's presence lingered. "I still can't believe it," Mia said softly, her voice carrying the weight of awe. "It was him, Daniel. It had to be." Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I don't know how or why, but Shadow's always been more than just a horse. Last night, it felt like he was watching over all of us." They stood in silence for a long moment, the clearing bathed in golden light. The trails that stretched before them seemed endless, each one carrying the promise of new stories, new connections, and the enduring legacy of the horse who had brought them together. The ranch continued to flourish, its reputation bolstered by the tale of Shadow's miraculous return. People came not just to ride or heal, but to be part of something greater. A story that reminded them of the unseen forces that guide us, the bonds that endure beyond time, and the love that carries us forward even in the darkest moments. Mia and Daniel often spoke of Shadow, sharing his story with visitors who sought hope and inspiration. His bronze statue at the ranch entrance became a place of reflection, where people left flowers, notes, and small tokens of gratitude. Each offering was a testament to the lives Shadow had touched, a reminder of the enduring power of his spirit. On the anniversary of Shadow's passing, Mia and Daniel hosted a special gathering at the ranch. Friends, neighbors, and visitors from afar came together to celebrate his life and legacy. They shared stories, laughed, and shed tears, their voices mingling with the soft rustle of the trees and the distant hum of the trails. As the sun set, casting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Mia and Daniel stood together beneath Shadow's statue. Daniel held a small wooden box in his hands, its lid engraved with Shadow's name. Inside were the horse's favorite things: a small bell from his bridle, a piece of braided leather from his reins, and a tuft of his mane. They had kept them as reminders of the horse who had changed their lives, and now they decided it was time to let go. "We'll never forget you, Shadow," Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've given us everything, and your story, it will never end." Mia placed a hand on the box, her tears falling freely. "You brought us together, gave us a purpose. We'll carry you with us, always. Together, they buried the box beneath the oak tree in the clearing where Shadow had first brought them together. The crowd stood in silence, the moment heavy with love and gratitude. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, a soft breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the faintest sound. A nicker, distant and ethereal, as though Shadow himself was bidding them farewell. From that day forward, the ranch became more than just a place. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the connections that define us. Shadow's story lived on in every visitor, every trail, and every heart that found solace within its gates. Mia and Daniel, forever changed by the horse who had refused to give up, devoted their lives to honoring his legacy. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the universe, Shadow's spirit lingered, eternal, guiding, and free.